Okay, so is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, try to interact, because otherwise it becomes difficult for me to know whether you are getting things or not. And I understand there is a bit of break uh, in my lecture, so and things that are taught in between will be referred during this discussion. So in case you are not able to follow certain concepts or something that I say, just interrupt me so that I can try to clear it before I proceed further. Is that okay? Hello?
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what we are discussing about, so you have learnt about inheritance. Now, inheritance means its reusability, but even in an inheritance scenario, when we are talking about dynamic binding or some other features like virtual function, we are trying to have maybe through inheritance, what is the aim? We want to create, say, a hierarchy of classes, right? Through the inheritance process, we would like to create a hierarchy of classes. Say if this is a class A or say this is a base class, we have got a derived class D, and this derived class may have another derived class C, something like this, or maybe it will have some other derived class E, like this. So there is a hierarchy of classes that so this is what the objective is, and this kind of tree is called each of these is called as a is a relationship. Is a relationship. This is a relationship. So each of these relationship between D and B, it's a, we technically call it as, it's a inheritance. So class D is inherited from B, class C is inherited from D, and class E is inherited from D. Okay, have you switched on the recording?
Yes, sir.
Is the recording on?
Yes, sir, it is on.
Okay, so up to this it is fine, and in during inheritance you understood that when I am trying to inherit, D is trying to inherit uh, properties of B during its definition, will it be in a public mode, private mode, or protected mode? So those things we have I think you have understood, and those concepts has been explained. So now let us specifically focus on that the mode of inheritance, that is in which mode it is going to inherit, is always going to be public. So let us ignore the rest of the complexities. So what I mean is, if I have got class B, whatever it is there inside the members, when I'm writing class D, which is inherited publicly from this class uh, say B, so this is always public. So this part is the mode of inheritance is public, and we are trying to do something here, and then C gets inherited from D and all this, so that is also public. So right now we are not considering this to be public, this may be protected, this may be private. So let us make it simple, and the focus in this during this topic will be, now can some kind of polymorphic nature be added in these hierarchies? Okay, so we'll see at the end of the few of these lectures that can we end up with polymorphic class hierarchies. So that is objective. So we don't just end up creating class hierarchies, that you can always do once you have learned inheritance, but can we create polymorphic class hierarchies? So what is meant by polymorphic class hierarchy? What is a kind of polymorphism that we are targeting at? So that is the main focus of these lectures. Okay, so polymorphism, it means from the user's end, it means some sort of intelligence that we expect, some sort of abstraction. Intelligence is these days it's everything is related to machine intelligence and all this. So that's not let us not talk about intelligence, so some bit of abstraction, and or also some bit of magic that you will find sometimes. So you would like to add some bit of abstraction, some bit of polymorphic nature, some bit of magic into the code, so that we end up with polymorphic class hierarchies. That is the aim. So why we need that? Let us try to understand that first. What is the context, and why it is important to have polymorphic class hierarchies instead of just merely having hierarchies of any levels? And then we'll come to the case of how it is implemented, like what internally the compiler does to make it happen. Okay, so that is the basic objective and the focus of these lectures. So before I get into the continuation of the slides, let us take an example. I mean, an example of, say, okay, so maybe director is a class. A director, I mean, I try to think of some analogy with the real world, so that you can actually have a feeling of the problem or the feeling of the issues that is related to this design problem. So director or director class. So when you say in the institute we have a director, so director is a person, but his roles, his facilities, his features, characteristics, I mean administrative, in the administrative terms, you would like to define a director class. Okay, and in the director class, say for example, you have got, he has got his chamber or office, and there are other things like there will be some kind of some meeting room. So generally when the director calls a meeting, he calls a meeting in the senate room, because he calls a large number of faculties and deans and all to address. So he will be having an office, he will be having a vehicle also, generally that is given by the institute during its tenure. And then when he goes for meeting, these meetings are generally held in senate hall. So senate hall is a part of that director's building. In that the building administrative block, you will find that there is a senate hall that can accommodate almost like 200 persons, nice audio, and everything is there. Okay, so this is what that, but we know that the director cannot really uh, tackle all the activities that goes on in the administrative activities that goes on in the institute. So this is not possible, right? So what he does, there are deans. So deans are supposed to have some specialized activities that in general the director need to perform. So the director, as a part of the charge of the entire institute, he is supposed to take care of administrative decisions like related to the faculties, the staffs and all, their salaries, their I mean all the issues that they have got. He also is supposed to tackle all the issues related to the student activities, exams. So any other kind of issues, he also need to tackle the financial matters of the institute, planning and all this. So everything he need to tackle, but he alone cannot simply do it. So that's why in the hierarchy there is a dean class, say for example, and the dean, director, definitely there is a single person as director, but as deans, he has created multiple dean positions. Each of the deans, they have got some specific specialized purpose. So a dean academic just deals with the academic affairs, dean administration deals with the staff and faculty related issues, their payrolls and everything. There are dean research, who is only focusing on research, the phd students. There is a dean with, so all these are like this. So when you create a dean, so you can think of that dean is also administrative post, and which has got some specialized role. And maybe because the deans also will probably enjoy the office vehicles, they will have their own offices, dean's office are there. Again, in that director's building, you will find in one side there are the offices of each of the type of deans. Okay, and they will also have some meeting rooms. So the point is, when you think of dean class or defining dean class in terms of facilities, you can inherit it publicly from the director class, but because it has got some specialization, so they will also, so these are the features and these are the, say, maybe the methods. So these are the methods. So they will also have an office, or I mean, if you just don't, even if you don't write the office, because you are inheriting the dean class from the director class, automatically this office gets inherited here, the vehicle gets inherited here. But when you try to think of the meeting, now the problem is the meeting also gets inherited here, but you would like to override the meeting method, because when a dean calls a meeting, he is not supposed to have the meeting organized in the Senate hall. It will be of a lower scale, and he is supposed to have it in his meeting room adjacent to his office. So maybe in dean's office, or maybe in some other room, in some uh, seminar hall. Okay. And whenever you have got, so these are dean class, and from the dean class, maybe you have got the associate deans. Now again, the deans are sometimes overburdened with the activities, and in some cases, like the academic dean, he has got associate deans. So maybe he has got one associate dean which is dealing with the undergraduate studies, another associate dean which is dealing with the postgraduate studies. So these are the associate deans, and then the class associate dean also will be something similar. That's why it will be derived publicly from the dean class. But now this and he will be inheriting everything from here because it's public. So he will have again an office, then a vehicle, and then he also need to conduct meetings, but his meetings will be more confined to a very few number of staff or the faculties. So he will take the meeting in his own office, in the office provided to him. Okay. And maybe, so this meeting is also inherited, and this is like this. But in addition to that, associate deans are generally junior faculties, and you can assume that apart from organizing meetings and having administrative works, they will be more focused on taking lectures, so take classes. So take classes is another method which is added to it. Okay. So in lecture halls, in lecture galleries, maybe. So here what I mean to say, I'm coming to the point that we are discussing. So let me take a uh, maybe an example which we can relate easily, the problem that we are discussing about regarding the upcasting and downcasting. So this is a director class, this is a dean class inherited from the director class publicly, and this is associate dean class which is inherited from the dean class, that also publicly. Now, during the inheritance process, based on, so initially, maybe when the institute was, I mean, several years back, most of the activities are handled by the director, or those times in the REC days, it was principal. The principal was, and the principal of the college. So he handles everything. Now, as it, uh, you know, grew, maybe with more facilities and all these more programs, so then the dean posts were created once the NIT came. So then this came, and the roles and the features are inherited from this, and then as it went even bigger, then the associate dean positions were created. So that is how it emerges. So even the class design also emerges. So what I mean to say is, now the director, as you can see, this meeting is a very common affair. So the meeting is it's a very common affair. So this is a part of the director, dean, and all this. So but the point is, so in any case, if you inherit this meeting action, or the meeting method will be inherited in all of them, but the location, or the mode in which they will organize the meeting, where they will organize the meeting, that will change. So the same meeting interface is there, but whenever the director calls meeting, it will be in, everybody knows it will be in the Senate room. Whenever the dean calls a meeting, the same meeting interface is the same, but it will be in the seminar hall. When associate dean calls a meeting, everybody knows that it will be in his own office itself. So there will be few number of members attending it. So as you can see, so some inherited items can be, you can rewrite that, you can override that, leaving the interface same. Few things you may not change it. So office, everybody will have an office. Vehicle, everybody will be given a vehicle, say for example, and you can add few more. So this is something you have added, this is something you have modified during the inheritance, this also you have modified, like this. So up to this, is this part clear?
Yes, sir.
So now let us see that for these directors, now these are all administrative posts and they need to handle so many administrative tasks. So each one of us, I mean, each one of the objects belonging to these classes, they will have some PAs. PA, the personal assistant. So they will have PAs. So this director can have a PA like this. So maybe I write here director level PA. For the deans, you have got the dean level PA, and for the associate deans, you have got associate dean level PA. Got the point? So what a PA is supposed to do? What is the role of a PA?
Organizing the work of his or her boss.
Hmm? So he's supposed to basically handle all the his meeting schedules and all this, and maybe he knows where he's currently in a meeting and all this. So he basically keeps track of the director. So a director level PA, he knows where director is will be found now and all this, his residential address. So everything, every details he knows. So in other words, you can say a PA of a particular person is a pointer to that person, is a, I mean, he can be used as a reference to that person. So if you would like to fix a meeting with the director, you have to talk to the PA. So, and he will then say, okay, this is a schedule, what is your purpose and all this, and he will say that okay, it is done. So he's basically through that you can reach to the director. So PA is something like that. So now let us come to the analogy. So whenever these classes are defined, so this director, say for example, I write say AB, Professor Basu, say for example. So he's a director object, but then director PA is, so this is something like this. So director PA is a pointer object pointing to director, it's capable of pointing to director. Okay. Now this dean is says somebody like dean D1 or dean Akkad, say for example. Dean Akkad is one particular dean. Dean faculty is another dean. Sorry. So now you have got dean this and dean PA. Okay. So these dean PA are, kind of persons who can point to deans, they are capable of pointing. So there are certain posts, and these persons, or in this case these pointers, they can point to dean objects. So like this like this. Okay. And at the same time, this associate dean, they are like AD1 and then AD2, like this. So these two are maybe under this academic team. Okay. So then we have got associate dean, and these are associate deans PAs. Okay. So up to this, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So now my question is, so definitely this director's PA, it can store the address of the director, that is quite trivial. So it can store the address of the director. This can store the address of dean Akkad, and this can store the address of associate dean, say maybe some other faculty. Up to this is fine. Now my point is, at some point of time, if I would like, say maybe that this academic dean's PA, he is in leave. Now, for the time being, you would expect that the director's PA handles the responsibility of the academic dean's PA. So try to get to the question. To the point. So everybody has got a PA position, and this PA is supposed to know the dean's activities. So if you ask that PA that okay, there is a this dean's PA, so there is a meeting called by the dean, he immediately say that you should be knowing that it should be in the seminar hall. That's all. If you ask the director's PA about a meeting, because he can only point to director, he wherever he points to that I want to attend the meeting, he says okay, go to the senate hall. That is what they will do, because they knows that the object that they are pointing to, that they are capable of pointing to, always have their meeting in their meeting room. These type of PAs always knows that the deans, they have their meeting in the seminar hall, and they always know that it will be in their office. So that's why they will direct you, right? Now see the situation that the directors, say the associate dean's PA has taken leave for maybe 7 days. Okay, and then who is going to take the responsibility? Now as per the rule says maybe that let the director's PA handle the dean's the responsibility of dean's PA. Okay, so this means that you would expect this to happen. So this person is playing the role. So the thing is, whatever was the responsibility of the dean PA uh, will be shared by this. Will be executed by this also. Got the point? Or maybe this can, so even this PA, because he's a director's PA, so he knows what the direct, so he can execute the responsibility of the dean PA, and he can execute the responsibility of the associate dean's PA also. Are you getting the point? So is it logical if I allow this to happen? Like a director's PA handles the responsibilities and the jobs of a lower the hierarchy. Do you think it is intuitive?
So downcasting is
A bit louder.
allowed.
Yes.
Downcasting is not allowed, no, sir.
Downcasting? No.
I'm
Again, let's not talk about the technicalities. My question is, intuitively, what do you think? Will it be allowed?
Sir, converse will be true, sir.
See, converse true means, say if you ask the dean's PA, you see the dean's PA, can he have, because the director is having a much bigger scope or maybe more complex activities. So if you assign the dean's PA to deal with the director's PA's role, so do you think it seems to be intuitive that it is allowed? So generally, in their ranks also. So first of all, you have to be an associate dean's PA, and you know what it is done. And then when you are in the dean's PA, then you have maybe you have got a more broader range of work. So like that. So from that perspective, again, it is purely non-technical discussion. So what do you think? So can lower lower rank PA can handle the responsibilities of a higher rank PA? Is it intuitive?
No, sir. No, sir.
So let us think. So I'm maybe that I'm trying to put my logic into it, but let us think in that way, so that you know that what is done and what is probably feasible and what is not. Again, when you come to the programming example, you may have got a different kind of intuition, but let us think of like this. But maybe that higher rank PA can handle a lower rank PA's activities also, because he already went through that ranking, because first he was so like that. So what I mean to say is, these are possible, like these DA pointing to these deans. So our director's PA can point to the dean or associate dean, and definitely to a director. That is possible. But the converse may not be true. That is, a dean's PA cannot. He can point to the dean. He can point to the associate dean, but he cannot point to a director, because he does not know what because the level of activities and all this he's not familiar with. Are you convinced?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let us, so now you see, now if I try to associate it with those terms, those two terms that I coined, upcasting and downcasting. Okay, so upcasting and downcasting. So what is upcasting? Upcasting means the lower rank PA is getting the role, or I mean, it is getting the responsibilities of a higher rank copied to it. This is called upcasting. So you are casted up, you see. So now, so if it happens, so like the director's P has taken leave. Now we know that somehow things are done. I'm not again getting into the actual things, but let us have a analogy of the whole thing. So the director's PA takes a leave. Now, if you assign the dean's PA the same role, okay, so he knows everything and all this, but he may not know many things. So and the thing is that the director says that no matter who is my PA, he should be knowing, aware of what I'm doing and my activities, everything like that. So now in terms of this level, so this is the topmost level, this is the bottommost level, right? So assigning this dean PA to this director PA, you are trying to upcast it, you are trying to casting it upwards, right? So this one, which is forbidden, something like this. So this is basically forbidden. So this is, you can see, this is upcasting, right? But this one, this yellow one, we can say this is basically downcasting. So you're already in a higher rank, or I mean, in some sense, you are already capable of dealing with the activities and the addresses and the references of higher level objects in the object hierarchy. But if you are assigned the address of lower level class objects, then you should be comfortable in doing so, right? So this is what is called downcasting. So these yellow ones are allowed, but these red ones are not allowed. This is not allowed. This is not allowed. So first of all, have you got this point clear till this point? Any question till this point, like intuitively? Hello, are you getting me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So upcasting we can sorry, uh, upcasting. So I have just messed it up. So what is allowed? So downcasting. So so this is, so this thing is allowed. So this is basically upcasting. Just a minute, I messed up with the terms. So this yellow one is, it is upcasting. So which one is casted up? So sorry, I mean, I just made a small mistake. So the thing is, what is upcasting? So the value, so the address of this dean is casted as if so this director's PA, see the point. So sorry, a small mistake I have made. So this director's PA, he can only store the addresses of director level persons. So if you are trying to assign the address of the dean, so at least you should say that okay, he's up to the level of director. Now you try to deal with it. So you are casting the dean's address upwards as if the dean is a having the role of a director, something like that. So that is it is called. So that's why to get this done, to get the director's PA pointing to dean or the director's PA pointing to associate dean, you would like to, or you would have to upcast the address of the dean or associate dean up to the level of director. That's why it is called upcasting, and this is allowed. Is that part clear in terms of the terminology that we use for this?
Yes, sir.
And now,
Yes, sir.
so yes, any question? So what we are casting? We are casting the address of the dean and associate, because you would like this person to deal with it. So the dean's address should be, or dean's reference should be casted upwards. It should be elevated to that level of a director, and that's why it is called casting. It will be casted upwards. Only then this person will be able to point to this and this. However, the reverse is not true. So a director's levels person's address, you cannot downcast it to a dean level and say that okay, you should handle it. This is not allowed. So this is somewhat undignified kind of thing. So that is what it means. So that's why this downcasting is not allowed, but this upcasting is allowed. Okay. So now the next question that comes, say we have done this. Say we have done at this moment. Say because he's in a leave, the director's PA, he gets the address of a dean. Dean means which dean? Say dean Akkad, or maybe yes, dean Akkad. So because of leave taken by this dean PA, he took the address. And now that academic dean is calling a meeting. So what do you expect? See the point. The dean academic is trying to function via the director's PA because his PA is in leave. So this is fine. So this is allowed. And what is this called? Upcasting or downcasting? What is this? You are casting a lower.
Upcasting.
It is upcasting. So dean academic in the hierarchy, he is of lower stature, and then you are trying to upgrade it to the level of director, and only then the director's PA says that okay, I can only deal with those the level that I deal with. That's all. So that is done. That is fine. So this is basically called upcasting. Now the thing is, now if the director's PA, if you write that okay, I would like to call a meeting, so he calls a meeting by calling the meeting procedure. He calls a meeting. So whenever he calls a meeting, what do you expect? A director's PA, generally what he knows, he always calls a meeting. In which room? In which room he make the arrangements?
Senate.
In the Senate. Now, while he was pointing to a dean academic, some other deans, where he is supposed to arrange for the meeting?
Seminar hall.
In the seminar hall. But what we will do, I mean, so what you expect it to do? Expect him to do? First of all, this assignment is fine, but when you call the meeting, what is your expectation and what actually happens?
Sir, we expect it to happen in seminar hall, but it
Yes.
will be called in Senate.
So until unless the question is until unless he is having some kind of intelligence, you can say, or some kind of abstraction, and he knows the magic, so that he should be having the intelligence. Okay, I know I deal with directors, that's all, but now for the timing I am trying to point to a lower rank officer or lower rank post, and I should be intelligent enough to know that where the meetings are done, because I know the meetings are the meeting method in this case, you can say, or the meeting activity has been overwritten. So in different levels the meetings are organized in different places. So the thing is, first of all, he should be knowing that in terms of organizing meeting there are differences, that he should know first, right? So how the system will let him know that okay, the meeting you shouldn't be dumb enough to just always fix it in the Senate hall. You should be applying your mind, and you should say that okay, because the meeting procedure is not the same down the hierarchy. So how to feed this information that the meeting method is not all the same? How to feed this information? Are you getting my point? If you don't say anything like this is a meeting, this is a meeting, this is a meeting, so he says that okay, I don't have any information, I know that meetings should be in the Senate hall, that's all. Now if you would like me to act more smartly, intelligently, based on whom I am pointing to, so you must tell me that meetings are overridden, or meeting methods or the meeting activities are different in different hierarchies. Are you getting my point?
Sir, but in this scenario, you
Hmm.
said in order to be a PA of a director, he will come across the lower levels also, no, sir? So
Yes,
we
he
should
will.
expect him to have the intelligence.
No, no, no. I understand. So the thing is, he can handle it. That's fine. But the thing is, how to let him know, because there are so many activities. There may be some other activities which is not overwritten, which is same as it is. So the thing is, how he should. I mean, the system should let him know that okay, these are the activities. These set of activities are different in different hierarchies. these set of activities are all the same. Have you got the point? So it is something like the close the office. Close the office is an activity, or open and close the office. Now, if it is office time, so every office gets closed at 5:30. So this closing of the office time is same for director, dean, and associate dean until unless there is some very emergency situation, right? So that is all the same. But while you are handling the meeting, they should be differentiated. So how you say, what, in what way you say that the PA should know? He says that how should I know this? That there is a distinction while meeting is called, but there is no distinction when you think of closing the office. Are you getting my point? He is capable of doing that, but he should be informed about that. Are you getting the point?
Yes, sir.
So how that is achieved? In terms of programming technology, I mean programming terminology, the only thing that through the way you do this is you just call this meeting as, are you getting the point? This is a keyword that is used. Hello? Is that, are you getting the point? What I wrote? I wrote a keyword, I tag a keyword virtual. I tag the method meeting with a keyword virtual. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
So this means that the system, the administration of the entire system, the functioning of the college says that, so every person, the director, dean, and associate, they have got different activities, and each activity is a method, say for example. And you say that some of the methods are overwritten, or they are different in different hierarchies. So this tagging this meeting as virtual means that when the dean inherits this meeting method, meeting interface, he may or may not, I mean, it is expected that he will be overriding it, or he will be changing that. Interface is the same, but the function of the method is not the same. Again, when the associate dean inherits that, or in the programming when you are coding that, then again the meeting interface is inherited, but the internals of the meeting method is different. So you can still do it, but to allow the PA to also act intelligently, you have to tag it as virtual. Otherwise, everything will happen. But when you call DA through the director's PA, if you call the meeting for a dean, because he's now pointing to that, he will simply be, arranging the meeting in the Senate hall. But if you tag it as virtual, he will have a list. So the PA will have a list. Okay. So now once it finds that it is virtual, so whenever he tries to arrange a meeting, he will then he will do some activities. Instead of blindly arranging it in Senate hall, he will do some activities. So what are the activities in the programming compiler also it is done, we'll look into it. So he will add a bit of intelligence and say that, okay, now whom I am pointing to, I am pointing to, so the address I am pointing to is actually dean academics, it's not the actual director. So in his role, because it is virtual, the meeting method is virtual, so let me see that whether he also is organizing it in the Senate or in some other place. So we'll look into, and he will basically invoke this one. So if you tag it as virtual, then, so if it is tagged as virtual, then the answer will be, it will be in the seminar hall. And if you don't tag it as virtual, then it will be in the Senate hall. So when this is called, this is going to happen. Are you getting the point? Is that part clear?
Yes.
আমি ক্লাসে আছি এখন, একটু পরে দাও, আমি ক্লাস নিচ্ছি তো এখন, আমি ক্লাস নিচ্ছি এখন, আমি প্লিজ, আমি ক্লাসে আছি, ছাত্ররা আছে এখানে। হ্যালো, হ্যাঁ, সো হ্যাভ ইউ গট দিস পয়েন্ট? So when the
Yes, sir.
director's PA calls the meeting, if I have tagged this as virtual, the meeting method, so then it will be handled in an intelligent way, and it will be called in the seminar hall. But if you have not used the virtual keyword, if it is missing, it will be in the Senate hall itself, and that will be a complete mess, right? Is that part clear?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Now, the nice thing that happens when you tag some method as virtual, when you are trying to inherit, say the dean class from the director or from the associate dean class from the dean, so this virtual keyword also gets inherited. So automatically, even if you don't write anything, this will be treated as virtual. Even if you don't write anything, this will be treated as virtual. So that's a nice thing. So in the topmost hierarchy or in any hierarchy above yourself, like if you're in the associate dean, if some of the method which is defined in the dean class or in the associate or in the director class, if some of the methods are tagged as virtual, listen to it carefully. If you have tagged, because who existed first? First the topmost class existed, then you have derived the next class from this, and then you have derived this class based on the necessity and the complexity as increases from this. So this existed first, then this came, and then this came, like that. They may be done all at once, but one by one, stepwise. So the point is, if in the directors class some of the method is tagged as virtual, so whenever you are inheriting some other classes from the directors method, definitely you are going to inherit, because it's public, all public, say for example for simplicity. So definitely you are going to inherit all that is there, all the methods in the higher class, in the base class you will be inheriting. The thing is, it is not only you will be inheriting, but you will be inheriting a virtual method as virtual. That's the point. Even if you don't write it virtual, even if you don't write it explicitly, it will be treated as virtual. So this will be treated as virtual even if you have not written it explicitly. Is that part clear?
Yes, sir.
And if you have made something as virtual, down the hierarchy that method remains virtual. And if down the hierarchy the derived, any of the derived class, maybe this or this, it wants to override that particular method, it is done. And not only it is done, but whenever you are trying to access an object of this lower hierarchy via some object, via some pointer of the higher hierarchy, a pointer of type director, whenever it is accessing that same virtual method inherited by the associate dean, it intelligently, or I mean with some bit of intelligence, some bit of abstraction, it will be invoking this copy and not this copy. So that's the entire story. Got the whole outline of the story?
Sir, you are saying the overwritten copy will be invoked, right?
Yes, because that it should be. Because you say that you are just a PA, so as a PA, so I don't know who is going to handle my responsibility. So as a dean, I just say, okay, I have to call a meeting, I have to do my activities, and you are having a pointer. So in the real life, let us think of a real life. So in the real life, you just instruct your PA. Who is your PA? You don't care. Somebody is there in your PA office. You say, okay, I am having a meeting at 3:30. Just arrange it. And you should be, and you should feel that, okay, no matter, so maybe the director's PA is giving a proxy, doesn't matter. So you say that, okay, don't you know that my meetings are will be in the seminar hall, so why it is in the senate hall, like that. So here in this case, that means a pointer of a base type, when it is pointing to, or it is storing the address of a derived object, derived class object, if you are trying to invoke a method which is basically common in all, I mean it has been inherited from the base class, it will be invoking that overridden copy of the method if it has done so by the derived class. If it has not done so, then doesn't matter, so it is the same. Is that whole story clear? Because that is the essence of this whole, I mean the entire topic. So we will be going into the details of it, and then the implementation, and the other kind of issues that arises. But this is the entire storyline. Is that part clear?
Yes, sir.
All the other students, is that part clear?
Yes, sir.
So before I get into the this programming details, it's always can be done, but once you know the story and maybe make up an intuition behind why it is so, then probably you can get yourself convinced easier in a much easier manner, and then you can focus on the syntactic issues and all this. But this is a whole story. Now, when we say this is a pointer, you see this is a pointer. So I say that director's PA is a pointer. I can also think of references, right? So references means pointer variables can point to specific objects. References variables can also refer to that, right? So instead of writing here pointers, if I write here reference variables, will the story be the same? So if I instead of like this, instead of that, if I write director PA reference, how do I write it? Director's PA reference is AB. Okay, so so pointer and reference in both the cases. So this is, it is storing the address, and in this case it is just a new name to that, like this. So in both the cases this will hold. Are you getting the point? In both the cases, so Dean PA, I say this is a reference, and it can refer to Dean account. So when you think of creating a reference post, so somebody talks to, so he feels that as if he is talking to that director himself, but he is not. So whatever communication, so you are trying to communicate with him, so you are communicating with the PA, and the PA almost like he himself sometimes, I mean, he's as good as the director. He says, okay, you can do this, you cannot do this, like this. So what I mean to say is, in terms of programming terminology, the same logic holds if I talk in terms of references uh, in addition to pointers. Is that part clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, let us come to this example, and let me see that whether you can answer it. Also, the answers are given. So now this is class B. What is this? This is a base class. This is class D. What is this? This is a derived class. Now base class B, it has got all the members public. And strangely enough, it has not defined any data member. There are only member methods. What are those? Fn and Gn. Okay. So in the prompt, these are all trivial methods. It just says that this Fn, B is Fn. So B scopes Fn and B scopes Gn. B scope resolution Gn. So it's Fn belonging to the defined in the class B, Gn belonging to the class B. When you are trying to derive class D from the publicly from B, this is public by default. I mean, throughout your discussion, we will not complicate it in terms of private and protected kind of mode of inheritance. So now again everything will be public. Now what it is done here, it is just like trying to redefine the meeting space. So this D decides to overwrite, and when it overwrites, it simply says that this is my version of Fn and nothing else. And this Hn, and so this is overwritten, so this is overwritten and this is added. This is an added feature. So when you derive D, you add some extra feature, you modify some of the inherited features, and some of the features you can accept as it is. So what is that? So the Gn. So the Gn is basically inherited without change. Okay. So when D is derived from B, he receives everything from B, but decides to overwrite Fn, decides to use Gn as it is, and decides to add Hn of its own. Is that part clear? So in the base class, you have got the interface Fn and then Gn. in the derived class D, you have definitely got Fn, but you have got a Fn with a different copy of Fn. Okay, so this Fn has got changed. The Gn, it is as it is. The same Gn is here, and you have got an additional copy of Hn. So Hn is here. So in the class B, you can call Fn and Gn. In the class D, you can call Fn, Gn, and Hn. So now when I use this, so this is a D as an object. This is an object of type D. If I call f dot d dot fn, d dot gn, and d dot hn, what will be the output? A simple derived class object. If it calls fn, gn, dn, is it possible? It is possible, because the derived class, it has got three method interfaces, fn, gn, hn. So if I call this, what will be the output? D dot fn. D dot fn means which version will be copied. So it has overwritten and there is a base copy. So which copy will be invoked?
Sir,
You're getting my question?
overwritten copy will be
Overwritten, because there is no ambiguity, because this is a derived class object, and in the derived class object, if you invoke fn, you are definitely referring to this. So there is no ambiguity at all. So it is D is fn. Then you are writing d dot gn. Is gn there in dn explicitly? Gn, does the class D define Gn in its own way?
No, sir.
So simply, but because it has inherited it, even if it has not done anything with it, this Gn means this Gn will be used here. So there is B is Gn, and this Hn it has defined of its own. So it definitely it will be invoking and it will be displaying this one. Now the thing is, what we do here, we have created a reference to base class. You see, RD is a reference to base class. So this class is reference. That means the director's PA. There I am trying to assign the reference of this lower class object. That means the dean's some dean's reference I am trying to assign to a person who can refer to director. That is what is happening. So is this an example of upcasting?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
A bit louder, because your voice is not, I cannot hear your voice. Is that part clear? Can we say it is upcasting?
Sir.
So why it is called upcasting? Because this D, the identity of the object D, which is a lower order object, lower level object in the hierarchy, is casted as if it is a it is a base class object. So that is what casting means. So you are a normal, so I am a normal citizen. I'm a normal citizen, but in a movie I play a role of maybe a CM or PM. Doesn't mean that I become a PM or CM. Okay, it's something like that. So you are having a lower, you are actually a person in a lower down the hierarchy, but for the time being, for that moment, I am casted as if I am in a higher, in the hierarchy. It is something like that. So that's why it is called upcasting. So who is getting upcasted? This D is getting upcasted. So D is getting casted up to the hierarchy, because the person who is going to refer can refer only B type objects, can only refer to base type objects, right? So once it is done, then this is just a reference. So using the reference, I can invoke all these methods, right? So if I write art.fn, art.gn, art.hn, will they be allowed?
HN is not allowed.
Why it is not allowed? If I write rd.hn, why it is not allowed?
Sir, because the reference type is of the base class.
Yes. So again, if you think that, if you are talking about the director's PA, so the director's PA, he says that I can store the address, or I can be act as a proxy of a dean's PA, but through me you can only trigger the methods that the director is having, that is common to the director and the dean. But if the dean, he has done some exclusive methods, or he has done he's having some exclusive activities which a director does not execute, I don't know about it, so I'm not supposed to know about it, so I can't do that, right? So it's like RD is a director's PA, and he knows what the director functions. If for the time being he's playing as a proxy role, and he is assigned the address of a dean, and he's asked to deal with his activities, he says that okay, I can do that, but I can do that only to the level of methods or the activities that is common to the director. If the dean himself, he has defined some exclusive activities for the in the dean level, I'm not going to deal with it, because I don't know about that. Is that fine? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So that makes sense, right? So this rd.hn, it will not work, because it is not supposed to work, because rd is not supposed to know that what exclusive things being here, you don't know what exclusive things you are going to define here and here. It's not aware of it. So that's why this is done. Now when you call rd.fn, so you are here, you are sitting here in this hierarchy, so you are trying to invoke fn. So which fn you should invoke now? It's like the clash of where the meeting should be held, Senate Hall or Seminar Hall. So which copy, this or this copy?
It will invoke the base class copy.
The base class copy, because as I mentioned, you have not made any provision to let me know that fn that is defined here has been overridden here, or there is a possibility of getting overridden here. There is no such information given to me, right? Where the information should be fed, where you are supposed to feed the information?
Sir, in the base class
Here, right?
method prototype.
So here nothing is written, because I know my office space, and I know what is. I'm in the class, call me a bit later. Hello. So thing is, the director's PS, he says that okay, I can only trigger only the methods common to the director and the dean, and that too if I find that it's a virtual tagged method, it's a method tagged virtual, it's an activity tagged virtual. That means I should apply a bit of intelligence other than blindly executing that. What is that intelligence? He should be checking that whether, I mean, it is not he will be checking, but the system will be checking. So he will also have some other ways of ensuring. So that will be done in an intelligent way. So all those details we'll talk. So the thing is, at this moment we know that this is not going to be dn.fn, although you are, so this person is actually referring to this reference of this object, but it will fail to invoke this fn, and it will simply invoke this bn's copy, and that is not expected. So your expectation fails, right? And then if you do the same thing, instead of reference, if you do it in terms of the pointer, so it's pd is a pointer to the d, okay, and then here you are assigning the address of d. Then instead of just using the dot, you will be using arrow. This will work and this will not work. Here also the same thing, dn expected is not invoked, rather it will be invoking b.fn. So what we conclude, when a function is overridden by the derived class, it fails to invoke the derived copy when upcasted. So it fails means unless you take some additional measures. In a general case, in a normal case, if you just simply write like this, it will fail to invoke this case, because till now we are not, so this slide has not introduced a virtual keyword. So this is a normal situation. So you know that there is a hierarchy of classes, and at times using a reference or a pointer of a base type, you may like to invoke methods of derived types, because they are actually, or in other words, they are, if a pointer is higher in the hierarchy it is capable of pointing to the objects in the same level, and also it can store the reference or addresses of objects of lower types, I mean lower in the hierarchy. That is possible through this upcasting feature. Okay, and if you have not used virtual, then in an overridden case you encounter such ambiguous or such unexpected outcomes. So to deal with it, we require some additional features. So in other words, you can say that, so no matter what you are doing, irrespective of what a base pointer or a base reference is pointing to, whenever you call fn, it will always invoke the base, it will always invoke the base classes copy, right? So this is, in some sense, this is called static binding. Okay, so no matter what it is done, whenever it is rd or this is a reference of base type, this is a pointer to base type, so no matter who it is pointing to, it will always invoke this fn, this b dot fn. So that means if this happens, that means a compiler in this case, so in such case, whenever there is a call like this, binding, I think we have already discussed about binding. So you can always write here call to this. So whenever it is this, it will always be fixed to this one. It is always be, in this case also, it will always be fixed to this one. So there is no dynamicity. No matter what it points to, it will always be pointing to that. So you can just, during the compilation itself, you can write call to that particular copy. So that is static binding. But to get the expected outcome and to take the advantage of upcasting, we would probably expect here dynamic binding, right? Is that fine? Hello?
Sir, can you repeat the last part, dynamic binding?
Yes. So what I mean to say is, here, if you have not used any virtual keyword, then you know that higher classes p or reference will always, so once there is no virtual tagging, he is happy. He says that okay, I don't have to care about all the complexities. Whenever you have call for a meeting, I will always fix it in the Senate hall. So if the virtual keyword is not there, so meeting calling means it is hard coded. So meeting organized by director's PA will always be in the Senate hall, no matter who he is dealing with, a dean or director or associate dean. Is that part clear? So this uh, staticness in fixing a particular location of the meeting, this is called static binding. But if you tag it as virtual, then there will be some kind of dynamicity, because now as a person, as a PA, he can point to director, he can point to dean, he can point to associate dean also. So there should be some sort of dynamicity. So during the compilation, in this case, you see during the compilation, you cannot fix the location to jump. Here, because there is no virtual, you know that rd.fn will take you to this place and it will execute fn. This also, it will always fixed. You know that it is not going to change. But if you tag it as virtual, if you write the keyword virtual here, you cannot be sure that whenever you call fn via a base pointer, it will always be this fn. It might be this fn. If it is pointing to a base object, it will be this one. If it is pointing to derived object. So whether it will be invoking this copy or this copy, that will be noted only during runtime, and that is the level of dynamicity that kind of dynamicity that takes place. Is that part clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So we'll have more details about it, but so gradually try to get into the requirement, and then what is required, and how it helps us, and maybe some kind of intuition. Okay, this probably is required in this way. So try to get this first, and then the details of the implementation we can always find out some way of doing things. So first of all, you try to understand the underlying philosophy of why it is required. Okay, so what we are trying to talk about, inheritance is fine. Inheritance we have already known. Now, I just don't want to just create inherited like hierarchy of classes, but I would like to have hierarchy of classes which are of polymorphic nature. Now you see, there's a kind of polymorphism because if you invoke things with the base class, base class pointer or base class reference, so the outcome, it depends depending on who is pointing. So it's some kind of dynamicity. So that dynamicity is important. So that is called dynamic binding, and that nature. So now the PA, it has got a polymorphic nature, right? So the same director's PA, depending on whose address it is storing, if the meeting is tagged as virtual, he has got a polymorphic role. And somebody who is outsider, he will be wondering, okay, he's such an intelligent person, like he knows if he's pointing to a director, he will be having it in the Senate hall, pointing to the associate dean, he will be having it in his office, to the dean. So that is, so who is playing a polymorphic role here? So who is playing a polymorphic role? Who is the person playing a polymorphic role in that example? Hello?
Sir, PA.
PA. So there lies a polymorphism, and this polymorphism will help us in many ways. We'll see that. So got the point? Where lies the polymorphism and how it helps us? Uh, now you say that you might ask the question like, why should I be assigning it to base pointers? So there are there are scenarios in a programming environment where this becomes extremely useful. I mean, when you try to uh, think of abstraction, we'll find that this helps. Okay, it is not for just mere exercise, but this is also good in some sense. So this will create some kind of abstraction in the class hierarchy. And in fact, in Python and many other languages, those who know that, you will find that you really don't have to. So when you maybe declare a reference, you don't have to write that whose reference it is, kind of thing. So you can think of writing more generic codes which will intelligently deal with that whom to invoke, whose copy to invoke, and all this. So we'll talk about it later on. But I think up to this, is it clear to you, right?
So then do we call it function overloading here?
No, this is not function overloading. So function is, see, function overloading is with respect to a single class. With respect to a single class, you have got two interface. You see, you have got the same function name with two different interface where the number of arguments differ and all this. So in the same class, say in the class B, you see, in the same class B, you have got fn with void and you have got fn with integer. That is called function overloading. And implementing function overloading does not involve too much of hassle, right? Because when you are calling, you are explicitly, you are either calling the copy fn for fn without any parentheses, or you are calling fn with 5. So it is very obvious. So then either this will be called or that copy will be called. That is called function overloading. But this is what it means. It is, you are trying to overload the responsibility of a base pointer or a base reference. Base classes pointer or base classes reference, you are trying to overload the responsibility of that. So depending on whom or what type of object it is pointing to, it will be able to invoke a proper copy of that if it is tagged virtual. That is what it means. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Questions till this point? Any questions from any other students? See, if you don't get this part, so the rest of it you will be just you will get out of track. So is that up to this? Is it fine?
Yes,
So
sir.
this is what I summarize. It is for inbuilt data types that we discussed in our last class. The implicit typecasting works among variables for many of the types. Explicit typecasting works among pointers, among types. However, it may be dangerous. For unrelated user-defined classes, what we found, implicit typecasting fails among variables pointer references that we found. Explicit typecasting of objects of different class type also fails. Explicit casting of pointer references of different classes work, however, it is not safe. Can you recall these points in terms of the in terms of my previous lecture?
Yes, sir.
Now today we talked about in terms of the inheritance hierarchy. Implicit upcasting works, this is safe. Implicit downcasting, it fails. Explicit downcasting works, however, it is not safe. That we also found in our last class. If you force downcasting, it will somehow there will be, you can skip the error message, but the outcomes it is up to you. That what we did, what we tried while trying to convert or downcast the SI. Sorry, the in that example, I think this example, this one, downcasting failed, right? And forceful downcasting it works. So this is forceful downcast. It works, but uh, the outcome is again unknown. So this is the example that that I take. So uh, if I use, see again the same example, everything is same. So this will be the last slide, and then I'll continue the class in the next lecture. So what we are doing here, you see class B, class D, public, Fn and Gn, and here Fn gets overridden and Gn. So the same example. Now here we are declaring just an object of derived type, and through that we are invoking. So it will be invoking this part. So this is fine. And now here if I upcast the reference and if I upcast the address, then in both the cases we get unexpected outcomes. So this part we have already known. Now if I tag this as virtual, so the one that I was discussing about, so if I put uh, if I tag the keyword virtual in front of fn, so I may not need to tag each and every method as virtual. So when I am designing, if I find that okay later on when you are having more complexity and when you need to derive say additional classes out of it, as a designer if you can foresee that, you probably will tag a particular method as virtual. What it means, assuming that whoever wants to derive a class from your class definition, this base class definition, he can freely override it, and in case of such upcasting, the compiler will be able to resolve. I mean, not the compilation time, in the runtime, things will be resolved and it will be acting in a polymorphic fashion. So if I tag it as virtual, just write virtual, then I know that the same virtual keyword is inherited as I mentioned here. So the same virtual is here, and you have added this h1, and this is gn also is getting inherited here. So now if this happens when you are upcasting, if I write rd.fn, what happens? Instead of static binding in both the cases, here instead of static binding you see it immediately becomes dynamic binding. And what happens here, this calls instead of b.fn, it calls as per our expectation d.fn. So what is interesting to find is a base class reference is able to intelligently invoke the derived classes overridden copy instead of blindly invoking the base classes version. And in case of gn there is no ambiguity, so it is just the static version. In case of Pointer also the same thing. It makes dynamic binding and it invokes a true copy d.f. So non-virtual functions static binding, virtual functions dynamic binding. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So let us stop the class at this moment. So in the next class I'll be mainly I'll talk about this example also. This also will be extending. So this example of guitar and instrument, and this is an example of dynamic binding using function pointers. So I'll recall that concept also. So these two I'll take not, it will not take too much of time, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then essentially I'll be talking about the some more issues like unhiding um, the methods and all this, and we'll typically switch to virtual destructors. So we'll see that why the virtual destructors are required while we are trying to create this we're trying to tag, or I mean whenever this upcasting is allowed, uh, at times we might get unwanted outcomes if we don't tag destructors as virtual, but constructors need not be virtual, but destructors need to be tagged as virtual. So what is the need for that? That is one thing, and another thing is the implementation of the virtual functions under the hood. So how it actually becomes this dynamicity or this magic, how it is getting implemented, so that we will discuss, okay, in the next class. Any questions till this point? Do you have any questions? Hello?
No, sir.
No, sir.
But I request you to I'll just pass on the slides, and I think the recording is already there with you for both the classes. So try to go through it so that you can ask questions, or you get tuned to the next class. Otherwise these are all related, so it is not just isolated concepts. So if you are not getting